You remember the game, children holding hands, spinning in a circle, reciting lines you were told meant plague sores, bouquets to block the stench, bodies falling. Everyone insisted it was a secret history of the Black Death, a nursery rhyme with corpses hidden just beneath the melody. But here's the disturbing truth. Historians say that story wasn't taught until centuries after the rhyme appeared, and we still can't stop repeating it. If you grew up chanting and collapsing on those words and want to dig deeper into why we crave darkness in childhood stories, hit like and subscribe. So why did we choose this myth for our children, and what really lies beneath the chant? Picture your own small hands tangled with classmates or cousins, forming a wobbly circle on a patch of grass or a school gym floor. Someone starts the chant, those familiar lines about rings and flowers, about pockets and something falling. The group shuffles and giggles, voices rising and tripping over the rhyme. There's a moment of suspense, a shared grin, and then, on the final words, everyone drops to the ground at once. Maybe you landed on your knees, maybe flat on your back. Maybe you peeked to see who was last to fall. For a moment, the world spins and you're caught between laughter and the strange stillness of lying on the ground, surrounded by the echo of the rhyme. Almost every childhood has a version of this game. The words might shift a little from playground to playground, but the rhythm stays the same. A circle, a chant, a sudden collapse. Sometimes the last one standing becomes the center of attention, the next Rosie or a target for teasing. Sometimes nobody keeps score at all, and you just scramble to your feet ready to spin and fall again. The lines themselves feel like nonsense. Roses, posies, maybe a hush or a sneeze, always ending with everyone tumbling down. No one pauses to ask what the flowers are for or why you're supposed to fall. The meaning isn't the point. It's the sound of voices together, the rush of moving as one, the thrill of letting go and hitting the ground because everyone else does too. This game isn't whispered history. It's a ritual you inherited without thinking, passed from older kids to younger ones, from one generation to the next. The words stick in your head for decades, long after you've stopped playing. Even now, you can remember the feeling of that final moment, the breathless drop, the shared laughter, the way the rhyme stitched you into something bigger than yourself, if only for a few seconds. Before you ever heard what adults claimed it meant, you just played. The chant, the fall, the laughter, that was enough. There is a reason the plague story feels so satisfying. It turns a jumble of playground nonsense into a secret code, one that only the clever or initiated can crack. You remember the thrill of learning it, how it transformed a silly rhyme into hidden history. Suddenly, you weren't just playing a game, you were reenacting a catastrophe, passing on a warning disguised as fun. That feeling of being in on the secret is powerful. It makes you want to whisper the explanation to someone else, to become the wise older kid or the knowing adult. But the evidence does not line up with that insider thrill. The oldest printed versions of the rhyme do not arrive until long after the Black Death. A German ring game shows up in 1796, with children sitting under a bush and chanting nonsense. No roses, no posies, no sign of disease. The first clear English print lands in 1881 in Kate Greenaway's collection, where children circle and tumble down, but no one mentions plague. In America, William Wells Newell records a variant in 1883 and claims it was already played in New England around 1790. Yet even that version is about girls ringing for little Josie, not about death or symptoms. The familiar words roses, posies, a sudden collapse only settle into their standard form in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Still, the myth persists. Schoolbooks and trivia columns map each line to a symptom or ritual as if every word was a clue. A pocket full of posies becomes a defense against the stench of death. Ashes or a sneeze stands in for the final breath. The last line, the fall, becomes a mass grave. It is neat. It is cinematic. It makes you feel like you know something adults tried to hide. Yet in the background there is always a quiet voice pushing back. Iona Opie, the folklorist who spent her life listening to children's games, called the rhyme a play party, a dance in disguise, not a code for disaster. She and her husband Peter tracked hundreds of versions, none of them tied to plague in their earliest forms. Their work, now the gold standard in nursery rhyme research, sits quietly on library shelves while the plague story races through classrooms and internet threads. The Road Folk Song Index, the catalog that tracks these rhymes, lists over 100 variants, most from the 1800s and 1900s, long after the plagues. The story we love to tell about the rhyme is not ancient. It is a modern invention layered on top of something much older and much stranger. The real secret is not in the words, but in how eager we are to turn a children's game into a tale of hidden horror. The Black Death swept through England in the mid-1300s, leaving nearly half the population dead. The Great Plague of London followed in 1665, filling the city with the sound of death carts and the stench of mass graves. But when it comes to the rhyme, the historical trail goes cold. Not a single diary, sermon, or pamphlet from those centuries mentions a circle of children chanting about roses, posies, or falling down. The earliest printed cousin of the rhyme appears in Germany in 1796, 400 years after the Black Death. That version describes children sitting under an elder bush, chanting nonsense, and then everyone going hush. No roses, no posies, no sneezing, no ashes, no mass collapse. It is a ring game, but it is not about plague. In England, the words do not show up in print until the Victorian era. Kate Greenaway's 1881 Mother Goose collection gives us the familiar structure: a ring, posies, a hush, and everyone tumbling down. No mention of ashes, no sneezing, no coded warnings. Just children in period dress playing a game. 2 years later, William Wells Newell records an American version in 1883, claiming it was already played in New England around 1790. Even then, the rhyme is about little Josie, not about death. The details that supposedly map to plague, rosy rashes, posies as protection, sneezing as a symptom, ashes as cremation, do not appear together in any early version. They scatter across decades and continents, never forming the neat code that the myth depends on. The timeline is impossible to ignore. The Black Death strikes in 1347. The Great Plague of London hits in 1665. The first printed game appears in Germany in 1796. The English rhyme arrives in 1881. That is a gap of more than 4 centuries between the supposed event and any evidence of the rhyme itself. Even if you trust Newell's memory of a version played in 1790, you are still over 100 years past the last Great Plague, and nothing links the words to epidemic death. The ashes line, so central to the myth, does not become common until 20th century American playgrounds. The plague theory needs a continuous chain, but the record is broken, with centuries of silence where the story should be. James Leasor stepped in during 1963, publishing an article in Reader's Digest that spelled out the plague reading for the first time. He mapped every line to a symptom or ritual, claiming the rhyme began in the Great Plague of London, but Leasor offered no evidence, just deduction and speculation. Before him, folklorists treated the rhyme as a game, not a warning. The hidden plague code story only takes hold after Leasor's article, spreading through trivia books and schoolrooms in the late 20th century. The facts are stubborn. The rhyme's earliest forms are about play, not pestilence. The timeline does not bend to fit the myth, no matter how much we want it to. Alan Dundes, one of the most respected folklorists of the 20th century, called the plague theory a clever modern overlay. In 1972, he laid out the evidence in the Journal of American Folklore. The rhyme's supposed medical clues, rosy rash, flowers for protection, sneezing, and a mass fall do not appear together in any early version. Instead, Dundee's pointed to the wild variety of forms collected from children. Some versions feature sneezing, some do not. Some have ashes, others hushes or atishu. The only common thread is the game, a circle, a chant, a dramatic ending. Jacqueline Simpson, another leading authority, went further. In her 2000 survey of English folklore, she labeled the plague reading a 20th century myth layered on top of a much older play song. Simpson compared it to other modern attempts to find ancient or pagan secrets in children's rhymes, always more satisfying than the messy reality of playground tradition. Her research, like Dundee's, drew on decades of fieldwork and the exhaustive cataloging of the Opies, whose Oxford Dictionary of Nursery Rhymes remains the gold standard. The Opies themselves found no trace of plague meaning in any early source. They described the rhyme as a play party, a children's dance with a ritual fall, not a coded warning from the Middle Ages. The Rude Folk Song Index, the master list of English-language folk songs and rhymes, catalogues more than 100 versions of the game from the 19th and 20th centuries. None of the earliest entries mention disease, let alone the Black Death. Where the myth appears, it is always in the commentary, never in the mouths of the children themselves. The consensus is clear. Folklore scholars treat the plague story as a kind of urban legend, a story adults tell about the rhyme and not one that grew organically from the game. The evidence points to a circle game passed from child to child, endlessly reshaped, with the plague reading tacked on centuries later. Dundee's called it a projection, an adult need to find darkness where children found only nonsense and laughter. Simpson saw it as a mirror reflecting our hunger for secret histories. The rhyme, in their view, is not a fossil from the Black Death, but a living piece of playground culture stubbornly resistant to grown-up explanations. The real question is not what the rhyme meant in the 14th century, but why we want so badly for it to mean something now. Children's games don't need a hidden message to feel mysterious. The real magic is in the rhythm, the way a simple chant pulls a group into step, bodies circling, voices blending into a single pulse. The words are almost beside the point. It's the beat that matters, the steady repetition that builds anticipation. Each round is a miniature ritual, hands linked, feet shuffling, the chant cycling faster or slower as excitement builds. With every repetition, the tension grows. Everyone knows what's coming, but the moment just before the fall always feels unpredictable. The ring itself is ancient, found in playgrounds from Texas to Stockholm, from Victorian London to rural Germany. The earliest printed versions, like the German Ringel, Ringel, Reihe from 1796, show children circling, chanting nonsense, and dropping or sitting at a cue. In England, the words shift, but the structure holds, a ring, a rhyme, a sudden collapse. By the time Kate Greenaway's 1881 Mother Goose appears, the game is instantly recognizable. The children aren't acting out a story, they're moving together, letting the rhythm carry them to the ground. This isn't unique to English-speaking kids. French, Swedish, and Dutch playgrounds echo the same pattern. Circle, chant, collective fall. The details change, but the core is always rhythm and collapse. Sometimes the end is a squat or a curtsy, sometimes a tumble, sometimes a moment of stillness before everyone jumps up again. The mechanics are simple, but the feeling is electric. For a few seconds, every child in the circle is swept up in the same current, surrendering to the group's momentum. No one playing stops to decode the meaning of the words. The power comes from the sound, the movement, the shared anticipation. The real drama is in the fall itself, the way laughter explodes as bodies hit the ground, how the world tilts and the game resets. The rhyme is a vehicle for this brief, thrilling loss of control. It's not about history or hidden warnings. It's about the irresistible pull of rhythm, the joy of falling together, and the strange comfort of knowing you'll get back up. Children don't need a history lesson to invent games about falling down. The urge comes from somewhere deeper, a place where fear and fun blur together. Dr. Paul Bloom, a psychologist who studies how kids understand the world, points out that pretending to die is a universal part of childhood play. Whether it's collapsing at the end of a rhyme, playing freeze tag, or acting out a fairy tale, the ritual is the same. Lose control, go still, and then spring back to life. Bloom calls this a rehearsal, a way for children to test out the scariest possibilities in a world that feels unpredictable. In his research, he found that even very young children are drawn to games where they mimic death and resurrection. They know it's not real, but the pretend danger lets them practice handling big emotions: fear, surprise, relief without any real risk. J.A. Bennett's work in child psychology backs this up. Bennett watched children play ring games and noticed how the collective fall wasn't just for laughs. It was a stress release, a way to experience chaos together and then reset. When everyone drops at once, the sudden silence and stillness can feel eerie, but it's followed by a rush of laughter and the scramble to get up. In that moment, anxiety gets burned off. The group collapse becomes a safe space to explore what it means to lose control, to disappear for a second and then to recover alongside friends. This kind of play isn't unique to any one country or culture. Across Europe and beyond, children invent circle games that end with everyone falling, squatting, or going quiet. The details change, but the drama is always the same: a shared rehearsal of something final, quickly undone by the next round. Psychologists see this as a vital part of growing up. It's not about teaching children to fear death. It's about giving them a way to face it, together in miniature. The rhyme's power comes from this simple but profound ritual: fall down, get up, laugh, repeat. Long before anyone told them the game was about the plague, children were already using it to make sense of the things that scare them most. German playgrounds in the late 18th century already rang with a familiar pattern. Children joined hands, formed a circle, and sang nonsense lines about sitting under a bush, ending with everyone going quiet or dropping to the ground. The 1796 German print version, Ringle Ringle Rhea, has no mention of roses, posies, sneezing, or ashes, just the ring and the ritual fall. In France, a 1935 collection describes children spinning in a ring while chanting about roses, then tumbling together at the end. The French words drift away from the English rhyme, but the game's shape remains: a circle, a chant, a collapse. Across the North Sea, Swedish children at the turn of the 20th century played Ring om Rosen. Oscar Almquist's 1909 notes show a ring game with a flower at the center, sometimes a real rose, sometimes just a word, and always the final moment when everyone falls or squats on cue. None of these versions carry the marks of disease or disaster. The German rhyme is about hiding or going hush. The French and Swedish forms focus on flowers, spinning, or simple gestures. The action is the constant, a group moving as one, then surrendering to gravity together. Sometimes the last child standing becomes it. Sometimes everyone springs back up and starts again. No one in these early records connects the game to plague, tuberculosis, or any epidemic. The words are playful, the movements coordinated, the meaning left in the air. Folklorists tracking these rhymes across Europe found the same pattern repeated in Dutch, Italian, and Scandinavian games. The details shift. Flowers might become animals, the fall might be a squat or a curtsy, but the core remains. The circle, the chant, the collective drop. The rhyme's power comes from its universality, not from any hidden code. Children everywhere invent ways to move together, to lose control for a second, to laugh as they hit the ground. The myth of a secret plague message doesn't survive the trip across borders. What does survive is the game itself, a ritual of nonsense and falling, echoing from Hamburg to Paris to Stockholm long before anyone tried to explain it away. Adults are drawn to darkness like moths to a flame, especially when it comes packaged as childhood nostalgia. Once the plague theory hit print in the 1960s, it didn't just spread, it exploded. Trivia books, classroom lessons, and late-night conversations all started treating the rhyme as a secret code. There's a certain pleasure in being able to say, you know that game you played? It was actually about mass death. It's the thrill of forbidden knowledge, the satisfaction of peeling back the surface to reveal something grim underneath. This isn't unique to one rhyme. The same urge has turned Rock-a-Bye Baby into a story about cradle death and London Bridge into a tale of human sacrifice. Nursery rhymes become puzzles for adults to solve, each line reinterpreted as an encrypted warning from the past. The more innocent the surface, the more tempting it is to imagine a hidden horror lurking just out of sight. The trend isn't accidental then. By the late 20th century, the plague reading of the rhyme fit perfectly with a new appetite for grim trivia. TV fuzz specials and magazine features promised to reveal the disturbing truth behind childhood favorites. Suddenly, every playground song was fair game for rebranding as a coded message about catastrophe or trauma. The more shocking the explanation, the more likely it was to stick. The real game isn't in the rhyme itself, but in the way adults keep rewriting its meaning. We want to believe that children have always carried history's darkest secrets in their pockets. We want to feel clever for uncovering a tragedy hidden in plain sight. It's not about what the words once meant. It's about the thrill of being the one who knows what nobody else does. London in 1665 was a city surrounded by reminders of death. The bills of mortality, printed in neat black ink each week, recorded the toll with chilling precision. Nearly 68,000 people lost to plague that year alone, out of a population just under 500,000. The numbers grew so quickly that entire neighborhoods emptied, leaving silent streets and shuttered windows. Samuel Pepys, writing in his diary, described the sight of dead carts rolling by, coffins stacked, and the air thick with the smell of decay. He walked past doors marked with red crosses, past families locked inside, past the bodies left waiting for burial. The city grew quieter with every passing day, the ordinary sounds of trade and gossip replaced by the rattle of wheels and the cries of searchers tallying the dead. For children, loss was part of the air they breathed. In 17th century England, about 2 out of every 5 children died before their 5th birthday. It was not unusual for families to bury a son or daughter before the next was born. Funerals were common, mourning clothes a familiar sight, and empty places at the table became part of the rhythm of daily life. Even outside of plague years, epidemics swept through towns in waves: smallpox, measles, fevers, leaving gaps in classrooms and games. The world was unpredictable, and every child knew someone who had vanished from the circle. The games children played were shaped by this reality, even if no one spoke it aloud. Falling down together at the end of a rhyme wasn't just a silly gesture. It echoed the suddenness with which life could change. The laughter that followed was more than relief. It was a way to reclaim control, if only for a moment. In a society where death moved through streets and homes without warning, play became a rehearsal for loss and recovery, woven into the fabric of childhood. Every explanation for the rhyme, whether it's about giggling children, a city haunted by disease, or a secret code for disaster, sits stacked on top of the others like layers in a story we can't allow them stop telling. At the bottom is the game itself, a circle, a chant, a group collapse. This is the oldest layer, the one that shows up in playgrounds from Hamburg to New York, Stockholm to New Orleans. It doesn't need a reason. The words are nonsense. The rule's simple. What matters is the ritual. Moving together, voices blending, falling down at the same moment. It's a rehearsal for chaos, wrapped in laughter and repetition. Above that is the world where the game took root, a place where death was part of daily life. In Victorian London, in colonial New England, in towns shadowed by epidemics, children grew up surrounded by reminders of mortality. The Black Death, the Great Plague, smallpox, fevers, these weren't distant history but part of the air people breathed. For families in 17th century England, losing a child before age 5 was common. Funerals, mourning clothes, empty chairs at the table, these were ordinary, not exceptional. The games children played echoed this reality, even if no one said it out loud. The collective fall at the end of the rhyme made sense in a world where collapse and disappearance were everyday facts. The final layer is the modern myth, the story adults tell about what the rhyme really means. This is the plague code, the secret history, the claim that every word is a clue to catastrophe. It's a recent invention, popularized in the 1960s and spread by trivia books and classroom whispers. The evidence doesn't support it, but it lingers because it feels good to believe we've uncovered a hidden truth. The disturbing part isn't that the rhyme is about death, it's that we want it to be. We take a circle game and drape it in disaster, then hand it back to children as a warning. The horror isn't just in the words, it's in the way we keep layering meaning onto them, turning a simple fall into a story about the end of everything. Think back to the first time you joined that circle. Maybe it was on a playground at recess, or in a neighbor's backyard, or inside on a rainy day with your cousins. The floor was scuffed, the grass was damp, or the carpet left marks on your knees. Someone grabbed your hand, someone else started the chant, and suddenly you were part of it. A ring of voices and shuffling feet, all waiting for that last word. Even now, you might remember the jolt in your stomach as you dropped to the ground, the sound of laughter echoing around you, the scramble to see who fell fastest or who pretended to stay still the longest. Did you ever wonder what the words meant? Or did you just let them wash over you, more interested in the game than the story behind it? Maybe years later, someone leaned in and told you the rhyme was about something darker. Maybe you repeated that story yourself, passing it along like a secret handshake. What version did you grow up with? Who explained it to you, and how did it feel to be the one in the know? If you're willing, share your memory. Which words did you chant? What did you think they meant? Your story is part of the circle, too. Every version of this rhyme carries a personal history. Maybe you learned it on a cracked sidewalk or in a classroom where the linoleum squeaked under your shoes. Maybe you heard the plague story from an older cousin, or maybe you just fell because everyone else did, never stopping to ask why. These memories are scattered, but together they map a secret history of childhood, a place where laughter and unease overlap. If you remember your own version, share it below. Did your teachers or parents ever explain what the words meant, or did you invent your own meaning? Were you the one who passed along the plague story, proud to know the real reason behind the game? Or did you hear something else entirely, about flowers, about sneezing, about nothing at all? Every comment adds another ring to the circle. Whether your rhyme was whispered, shouted, or half forgotten, your story belongs here. If you're willing, write it out. Which words did you use? Who taught them to you? And what did you think was really happening when everyone fell down? Somewhere right now, children are laughing, collapsing in circles, chanting words they never question. The urge to find death in their play says more about us than about them. Folklorists like the Opis remind us that stories evolve to fit adult anxieties just as much as childhood joy. The shadows we cast onto innocence reveal what we fear, not what they understand. The next time you hear that song, ask yourself, who really needs the darkness? Share your version below.